Good morning. Happy Friday, everyone. Thanks for joining. Um, this call is being recorded, and this call is joined by Microsoft team members as well as our partners. And we will place our recording on our YouTube channel. So, if you're not comfortable, you may want to drop off now. So, with that, our topic of discussion today is app service environment v3 general availability and what are some of the updates. So, let me just quickly. So first of all, just a quick overview. App service environment, as you know, is a virtual network. It's a VNet injected service. It's app service inside your VNet. So the infrastructure that is a part of our multi-tenant environment is injected inside the VNet, and this gives you ability to have an isolated environment for yourself or for your organization, and at the same time, it allows you to have VNet integration and all those good stuff. Um, at the same time, um, in the past, with the initial version, there was some kind of limitation where you have to open certain outbound communication, which was not very um, kind of which was not preferred by some security conscious customers or some customers in regulated industries. So that's where this V3 came in, and it took out all of those requirements. So if you remember, we had did a session sometime last year towards the end around the public preview announcement when it was made available. And this one, we're going to see what are some of the changes, what has kind of is the same, what is different, and what are some of the exciting things that we can look forward to when we take advantage of it. Okay. This is basically a quick high-level comparison. The biggest, the piece between AS v2 and AS v3, App Service Environment v2 and App Service Environment v3, which is you have outbound communication from the App Service Environment v2. On the other hand, with v3, you can and completely lock it down. Okay, so that's one of the big change. This is how the networking layer works. It has basically these two um, VNets where you have the customer VNet, which is where you deploy your app service environment infrastructure. And then behind the scene, it uses another VNet for all of its own communication. And with this model, it can offload all of the traffic, management traffic for ACE on that other VNet, which is out of the picture. And by the way, it used two subnets with the public preview. If you remember, um, we have to have two subnet, one where you deploy and the other one for this outbound communication. That has been taken all out. Now it only requires a single subnet to deploy. So that's an improvement from public preview that we had 6 months ago. This is a high-level comparison between ASV2 and ASV3. As you can see, there's a number of inbound and outbound ports you have to open to allow inbound and outbound communication because it has to, the management traffic has to come into ACE app service environment. Not anymore. As I said, you can completely lock it down. Okay, so let's focus on what has changed between what it was 6 months ago when it went into public preview and now when it has just gone to GA. First of all, app service environment only requires a single one subnet. So that uh, it may not sound like a big deal, but some customer they really are kind of have limited private endpoint space, private address space, because they have a lot of application. They have already used a number of IP addresses, and that's where this becomes an issue. If you like two subnets, if you require two subnet for app service environment, that becomes an issue for them. So that will help in that scenario as well. And if you remember, with the public preview, there was only one way to deploy app service environment. It was internal deployment, and there was a private IP that is available to access services from the app service environment. Not anymore. Now you can have both external, and we will look at it when we see the creation experience, and we will take a look at it to see how it works. So there was like you can deploy it an external, in which case you get a public IP and uh, application access can access your or users can access your web apps over a public IP address. On the other hand, um, you can deploy it internal where there's only a private address available. So it's only for intranet application, or if you want to put like a app gateway in front, then external application to make it accessible to external application. Okay. Maximum ACE instance count, it can be 200. If you remember in the preview, it was 5 or 10, I think, but now it can be 200. And we will, so that's, once again, this is um, for those scenario where you need a lot of app service environment instances. You may have a very large web application that you want to deploy. That's where it's helpful. You can now deploy a zone redundant app service environment wherever availability zones are available. So that's a big change. And finally, scaling times are much better than they used to be with the app service environment V2. So before I move any further, any question? Okay. So this is basically a rehash of some of the things that we saw on the last page. So let's kind of go back and okay. So first of all, before we jump into the demo, I just want to mention, talk about a few use cases. This question has come up, like, okay, with app service having support for VNet integration and private endpoint, why I will need an ACE? Why I need an app service environment? So there can be scenarios where you may, or use cases where you need this. For example, for high scale, for large application, just keep in mind app service with it, you with even with premium, you can go up to 30 instances. Okay. With ACE, you can go up to 200 instances. So if you have a very large application, that needs a lot of instances to support, and it's very busy, heavy load, that you need large instance to scale. That's where you want to take advantage of app service environment. So that is a scenario where app service environment absolutely will help you in kind of addressing that. Second is, as I said, with regulated industries, like certain organization, they want to have um, control of the infrastructure. They want to have infrastructure deployed. I mean, this even in the case of PaaS inside their VNet. Okay, in that scenario, app service environment makes sense because what you can do is you can deploy it inside the VNet. You have control of the infrastructure, though you're not making any updates to it. Microsoft is still updating, though on a they are not using any of your network for their traffic, but still you want to have it inside your kind of address space. And third is you can deploy app service environment on dedicated host. If you're not familiar with dedicated host, it's as close to dedicated infrastructure you're going to get in Azure. This is basically allows you the ability to have the entire host for yourself. So let me take a step back. Whenever you deploy a piece of infrastructure, let's say a virtual machine, it goes on a host, on a virtualization host. Okay. Uh, there is a possibility that in addition to your VM, there are other VMs running on that host as well, because it's all logical separation. It's not physical separation. You're logically, you're kind of a VNet or uh, is separated from other. It's not physically separated. So in some cases, customer want the entire, they want dedicated infrastructure. In that case, they can get the entire host. This is called a dedicated host, and a group of such hosts is called dedicated host group. Okay. Now you can deploy app service environment on a dedicated host. So basically, that's you're gonna be as close to a dedicated PaaS infrastructure. Think about it. You have your dedicated host, you take app service environment, and you deploy it on that dedicated host. Now you have your own PaaS infrastructure in Azure. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So that will be required. That is one thing that some of the customers who are kind of for legal or compliance reason, they need to have their dedicated infrastructure. They may want to take advantage of app service environment. That is not possible just with a multi-tenant app service. Okay. Any questions, folks? Okay, so it's demo time. So let's, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the creation experience. So here we are in the Azure portal. Let me increase the font size a little bit. Okay. So first of all, what you have to do is you have to do app service environment, and just make sure to pick app service environment v3. If you pick just app service environment, at the moment, it will take you to v2. Okay. So just pick v3 and it's gonna start the creation experience. You can pick a resource group or create a new one. Then you have to pick the name. Of course, it has to be globally unique. So I'm just gonna make it. And by the way, this is what I was saying. You can make it internal. So it's going to be ILBAs where you get a private endpoint, or you can have an external where it will be exposed, a public endpoint that is exposed, internet, accessible over the internet for other apps. Okay. So let's go with the external ones. This is the host group. This is what I was talking about. If you want to deploy to dedicated host, just keep in mind there will be two dedicated hosts that will be deployed to host your ACE. Okay, so if you go with that, there will be two dedicated hosts deployed. So just keep in mind, just remain conscious of the cost. So just, this is not a light decision. It can be, it has cost associated with it. So just realize it. What are the ramifications? The second piece is zone redundancy. And just keep in mind, if I do host group, zone redundancy is gone, because when you are doing host group, you're deploying it on a host in a zone, in a data center in a zone. Okay. So that's where your zone redundancy option is gone. But if you pick zone redundancy, then you cannot do host. So it's either one of the other. Okay. And even here, just be mindful of the cost. Okay. Because it's going to deploy multiple instances of app service plan. So think of it. You are deploying it on a zone. So it has to be deployed across the zone. So it will deploy some minimal set of instances across the zone. Okay. So it will be 3 or more, just to make sure that you have, this is a minimal requirement just to have that zonal availability. Okay. So that's something that you have to keep in mind. Um, So let's just disable it. And then, of course, you have to pick a VNet, and you can pick any VNet, and then just start creating that. So once you do that, it takes some time to create the app service environment v3. And once it's created, then you can basically start creating your app service on top of it. So let's go there. So I have two app service environments, v3. One is external and one is internal. So um, let me open a new tab, and let's now see how the app service creation experience is different with app service environment. So I just want to create a new source. I want to create a web app, and same thing. I'm just going to pick uh, a resource group. Web app name is, let's say, demo. And look at this. It's so you have, I mean, for region, you have your usual regions, North Central, South Central. But look, it has two other, now it has app service environment there as well. Okay. So I have two app service environment. One is external running Windows. One is internal running with the app service plan Linux. Okay. So let's say I go in there, and just keep in mind, previously app service environment was Windows or Linux. Okay. Now you can mix. You can have an app service environment which is running both Windows service plan as well as Linux service plan. So just keep that in mind. Okay. So let's say I'm saying I'm going to do a code. I'm going to do .NET 5. I want to do Windows. So you see, I already have a plan there, and it is picking up that particular plan. But let's say if I go with Linux, then it's going to say, oh, this is the plan. I mean, this is a new plan that, as you can clearly say, this is new. So if it is you're creating an existing app, you can use the existing plan. Otherwise, you can create a new one. And these are the sizes and their prices. So this is called isolated V2. This is the SKU that is used with V3. As you can see, it's the smallest is 281 and the largest is 1127. Okay, so these are the prices of these SKU. So let's go back there. So so let's say if we just go with Windows and we just pick the plan, and we just say review and create, it's going to create this web app. So once you just finish with it, it's going to create the web app. It will take a few minutes to do it. So a few, 10, 15 seconds to do it. So that's how this thing works. And I just want to show you the two app service environment. So while this app is being created, look at this v3 and look at the IP addresses. It's internal VIP. This is a private IP address that I have. Okay? Does not have a public IP address. Okay, and these are the two default outbound addresses that are there. Okay, and then it will say how many app service plan. I have one app service plan and one app in the slot in that. Okay, let's go back there. If we look at the external IP addresses, yes, it has a public IP address, and these are the outbound IP addresses for that particular app service plan. Okay, and this is kind of a high-level configuration. You can turn on encryption on all the environment, things like that. Upgrade preference, early, late. I mean, it's try to control your upgrades. So simple stuff. But the key thing here is VNet, kind of ability to lock down your virtual network. So let me just want to show you what I have here. So I have in this one, I have an NSG here. Go here. This is the NSG. And if you look at it, I am denying all internet. Okay, so basically this is an NSG. I'm denying all internet outbound traffic. Only VNet to VNet and load balancer traffic is, sorry, only VNet outbound is allowed. And it is attached to the ASC subnet. So this is the subnet where internal, um, uh, internal ACE is deployed. That is the subnet where that is deployed. Okay. With that, I have locked down all outbound traffic. Uh, but I have a web app that is running over there. I cannot access that web app over the internet because, that is available over a private IP. So that's the only way to access it. This is my um, VM that is I have deployed in the same VNet, and from there I can access that particular web app. So this is, and by the way, this is basically nothing. It is accessing a storage blob over a private endpoint. So basically, you still can access resources. You can access it private endpoint. If you have to need to access outbound access, you can either open all internet access, or if you are, want to limit access, you can use a firewall or NSG with service stats and things like that. Okay? So that's that. Oh, by the way, one interesting thing I want to show you. Of course, whenever we have a private kind of private link, or this type of private app service, or we have to have a private DNS zone. So this is the private DNS zone that ACE will create, App Service Environment v3 will create, if you are creating an um, internal only app service environment. So as you can see here, these are the two records that are of interest. This one, which is saying that all traffic which goes to star dot, so basically these are your sites. If any traffic that goes to the sites goes to this IP address. And the second one is this one. This controls the kudu. If you know that each website and Azure App Service has a twin, which is a management kind of site, start with SCM. Basically, it is like if my website.scm.azurewebsites.net, same thing here, .scm. And that's the site so basically this is the um, private DNS setting for that site. So all of the traffic goes to this IP address. Okay. So with that, let's quickly go back here. Website has been created. So if I go in here and I browse, yes, there's nothing running on it, but this is the website that is now running on a public ACE, public facing external with an external endpoint that is an ACE that you can access the website. Okay, so let's quickly go back to our. So there are some limitations. Just keep that in mind. First of all, you cannot deploy your app with FTP. That's one of the limitations. The big one is still there is not the ability. If you have an V2 app service environment, you cannot upgrade it to V3. According to documentation, this is coming. They have a plan for it, but when it comes, there is no timeline available. Okay. And one of the other thing is you still cannot monitor traffic using Network Watcher or NSG flow logs. As so that's something that's not available at the moment. Okay. In terms of pricing, okay, there is one important caveat to remember. Let's say that you created an app service environment, but you haven't deployed any apps. Let's say that your infrastructure team has created it, but the app team, they're not ready to deploy any app, and it's just there. You will be charged for one IV2 instance. So basically, it's $281 that we saw that you will be charged. It's once again, this is not the kind of what we call service fee or anything, because if, let's say, you deploy an app and you have one app service plan, then basically you're going to be use the same service plan that is already there. So it is, if you don't have any app, you will charge for one. If you have one app service plan, then basically you are using one that is there. So there's no extra tax that used to be with ASV2. Okay, you're only being charged for whatever is running there, except when you have nothing, you are charged for one. And if you are doing multi-zonal deployment, there is some implication as well. So just keep that in mind. And when you are running app service environment v3 in Azure. But once again, it's not. I just want to make sure that you're very clear on when you have an MTAs. It's not that you charge extra. It is just you have when you have no app running, you charge for one. But if you have, let's say, one or more app, that charge is not there. You're just using, the app service plan that is there. Okay. Okay. Any questions, comments? Okay, folks. Really appreciate everybody joining and hope to see everybody next week. We'll give everybody the 1 minute back. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe and hope to see everyone next week.